They're the haunting final photos of an American family's last vacation. There's Mom Shan'ann Watts proudly snapping a photo of her 4-year-old daughter Bella, who's bouncing on a trampoline.
She was super with her girls. She interacted with her girls the whole time. She was smiling. She was taking pictures.
Only here on NBC Charlotte, a North Carolina mother taking these family vacation photos in Myrtle Beach, capturing Shan'ann Watts and her 2 daughters just days before they were murdered, allegedly by Shanann's husband and the girls' father, Chris Watts. The woman who took these pictures says she spoke with Shan'ann while their children played.
Michelle Greer met the Watts family while they were all standing in line for the trampolines at a tourist attraction in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. They got to talking.
The thing that stands out is the amount of love that she had for her daughters.
Michelle Greer and her husband took their 3 sons to Myrtle Beach this month, and that's where they met the Watts family, in line with the kids for the bungee trampolines. Michelle and Shan'ann hit it off right away.
She told me she was expecting, so she was very happy she was expecting again. She was wonderful with the girls. She was very happy that they were there.
But she says Chris, on the other hand,
He didn't engage in conversation at all. He was just kind of standing there.
And there's Chris Watts, barely visible behind Shan'ann. It looks as if he's checking his phone. Michelle says he seemed indifferent to the fun his wife and kids were having.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. According to the discovery documents, Shan'ann wasn't sick while in North Carolina for weeks on end. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. But then the day that her husband Chris Watts arrived, Shan'ann suddenly started throwing up and had a bad headache. At the same time, Chris Watts was apparently standoffish, but the people around them didn't really think much about it. Another family member noted that when Chris Watts arrived in North Carolina, he appeared to be quite cold towards Shan'ann and the children. And this person was another witness who said that Shan'ann was vomiting for most of the evening. Chillingly, while this was going on, Chris was not supportive at all to Shan'ann, and people around them found this quite odd. Well, I personally believe that was Watts' very first attempt to get rid of Nico. On Discovery page 685, we get even more reinforcement to this notion that Shan'ann is suddenly sick when Chris Watts arrives in North Carolina, and yet Chris doesn't seem to care. Perhaps because this is exactly what he intended. At the time, apparently Shan'ann made a post about how she was dehydrated from being in the South, and yet her companion said there was no way she could be dehydrated because she drank a lot of water. So if Chris Watts did poison his wife, how could he have done it? Well, certainly by putting something into her shakes. She was taking shakes all the time. And one thing he could have put in there was a large dose of oxy, right? They had that in the basement. So let's look at what we're dealing with. The moment Chris Watts arrives in North Carolina, everything's different. Others, besides Shan'ann, noticed that Watts appeared to be standoffish. Well, yes, he was. And he had been standoffish actually for several weeks because he'd been head over heels on the Kessinger Affair roller coaster. Even though he was in North Carolina now, he was yearning to get back on that roller coaster. He didn't want it to end. What are we talking about here when we talk about being standoffish?
Standoffish.
Well, it means distant, remote, detached, impersonal, withdrawn, reserved, unfriendly, unsociable, cool, cold, disdainful, uninvolved, unresponsive, preoccupied, unconcerned, indifferent. And if you look at those photos of Chris Watts, isn't that exactly how he appears? And so if you combine that and the moment Watts arrives in North Carolina and Shan'ann becoming sick, you get a real sense of just how dangerous the situation is, just how, to what extent, Chris Watts has made up his mind what he intends to do and what he intends for his unborn child. Shan'ann is sick and out of sorts. Watts arrives in town after not seeing his family for 5 weeks. His wife is 13 weeks pregnant. And I think this shows you on the flight to North Carolina, Watts already knew what he had to do. And I'm sure when Shan'ann was on her flight to Colorado on August 12th, about 2 weeks later, Watts knew what he was going to do as well In a sense, if Watts had succeeded in stopping the pregnancy on July 31st, perhaps he would have stopped there. But as it was, the risk of the pregnancy remained, which meant, what do you think it meant? It meant the risk to his relationship with Kissinger persisted, and that was something he wasn't prepared to tolerate. Watts probably got very little sleep the night before, at Kissinger, unless he was able to sleep on the plane. At any rate, why are Watts and his wife texting each other about wake-up calls and loving each other? Why not simply say it to each other? Well, isn't it obvious? Because on his first night in North Carolina, they're sleeping apart. In fact, Shan'ann is sleeping on the couch, presumably in the family lounge. Meanwhile, Chris Watts is keeping his mistress in the dark about something as well. Guess what? Him and Shan'ann aren't separated. Well, not until August the 1st. And the night of July 31st, heading into August 1st, is really the first time Shan'ann realizes something is seriously wrong. Something is off. It's only on the first night with her man that Shan'ann is alerted for the first time that he might not be with her, that is. And just have a look at what Shan'ann posts on social media on this particular day. You need to ignore, look at those words, you need to ignore what everyone else is doing and achieving. Do you think that is really good advice in the situation she is in? You need to ignore what everyone else is doing. Your life is about breaking your own limits and outgrowing yourself to live your best life. Now think about those words in the context of her husband. He's about to break his own limits. He's about to decide to live his best life. You are not in competition with anyone else. Plan to outdo your past, not other people. Well, Chris Watts wasn't his plan to outdo some of the people around him. The morning after Shanann's headaches and vomiting and sleeping alone on the couch seemed to have passed, well, now she's excited about August and thriving again. On August 1st, what's missing from this anecdote? Well, there's zero mention of a significant change in her life. Her husband is back at her side after 5 weeks apart. Besides that, Shan'ann seems to be in a position to counsel and provide guidance to others less fortunate than herself. I am just truly blessed and love waking up thankful and happy. It doesn't take a genius, an expert, an FBI agent, or even a rocket scientist to gauge the level of harmony or happiness from these pictures and video. Shan'ann also documents in a clip posted to Facebook just how happy she and the family are. It's the first time the kids are at the beach, but Bella is actually mostly terrified and unwilling to hold her father's hand. Shan'ann never mentions Watts, and Watts never talks to her. There's very little in the phone data review regarding August 1st, just the fact that Watts took assorted photographs of his children on carnival rides at the Pavilion Park in Myrtle Beach. The people around them assume that Watts' silence is just really the same old introvert they've seen before, but actually it's not the same Chris. He's changed.
You've changed.
While he stands dumbly in the sea with Shanann's camera mercilessly trained on him, Watts must be wondering whether Kissinger will see this. And if Shan'ann is suspicious of an affair, well, wouldn't she want her, whoever it is, to see it? The question is, did she? And if she did, what did she think? Well, I'm not going to take it further than that, but I want to ask you guys, do you agree? Do you think that when Chris Watts arrived that very first day in North Carolina, did he attempt to poison Shan'ann? And do you also think if he did so by putting oxy into her shake, and that's why she immediately felt sick? Or do you think there's some other explanation? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.